Welcome to another episode of the Random Cinematic Universe, the show where we let an evil computer algorithm choose the movies we watch and then review on the show. This week I have with me Marc Nadeau and Nina Bordeval. And we're watching In Dreams from 1999. It was shot in 1997, directed by Neil Jordan, starring Annette Bening, Robert Downey Jr., Aidan Quinn, and Paul Guilfoyle. And I cannot ever associate that name with anybody but Guilfoyle from Silicon Valley.
Don't forget Stephen Ree, who was the psychiatrist.
Just going over the main cast,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, he was kind of mean.
A little.
Yeah.
These are like the top four from IMDb.
For sure.
In Dreams is a film that follows Annette Bening's character as she has these dreams and she does all these drawings where she has visions, but it's always that they're useless until, like, she doesn't get the visions until after the events have happened. And it follows. Marc, you've watched it most recently. Give us a little quick synopsis of the film.
Yeah, so she seems to be an artist who's like an illustrator, but is sort of plagued by these. Oh man, sorry. Edit that out. She seems to be Claire seems to be plagued by these almost like clairvoyant visions that seem to happen after something has occurred. So something that doesn't something that's bad sort of appears to her, and she thinks it's someone's. Okay, we're gonna no.
I'm gonna airplane my phone, see if that helps.
Yeah, I'm gonna go airplane mode. It's Jacob pinging us. Mine's in airplane mode, so
Jacob, go away.
I shouldn't do that anymore. Okay, so back to the story. So Claire looks like a children's book illustrator. She's plagued by these sort of clairvoyant visions that just pop in. She doesn't understand the meaning. She doesn't really have like somebody to interpret the dreams for her, so she tries to interpret them on her own. Typically, in the movie, they always seem to be coming after an event has happened, so she thinks they're things that have already happened, except for later on in the movie where they actually are sort of telling the future. But yeah, it was an interesting movie. There's some tragedy that happens to her. Seems to be a serial killer who has been abducting children, and she has a vision pretty early on in the film that she attributes to the current missing child.
Mm-hmm.
So she sends her husband off to go talk to the police. Speaks to a detective. They think he's crazy because they've already found the body of the girl, the current girl that was missing. And then the story progresses, and unfortunately, it's their kid that gets abducted, and it was her vision. Her vision was of her child that had been abducted and by the serial killer. And waking up at 6 a.m. and watching this movie, not a great start to my day. I'm just gonna say this is like any parent's like worst fear. So this has to be like traumatizing to anybody who has children or who has had anything happen to their children. So yeah, this was a rough wake up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good movie. Love the imagery, I love the foreshadowing, but it's like, and at times, I don't know, was it just the fact that I'd woken up and I haven't had caffeine? But did this movie feel rushed? Like, I felt like there was a lot going on in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it did. It was very much.
Yeah,
like, I don't know if you found this, but I found like watching the movie, it was just go 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 go. Like there was very little breathing room.
And at times I felt like a feverish dream, like she's having these visions, and like, okay, it's pretty clear to tell when it's a vision because they sort of have like a vignette sort of effect around when it's a vision versus when it's real life. But sometimes when it was real life, it was still taking on that effect. Like when she was in the asylum, and it felt like, okay, is this a dream? Is this real? What's a dream? What's real? And that's kind of what made the movie fun, is because you're watching it and you're guessing what's a dream and what is real. And it was, I mean, probably the intent to make it feel very dreamlike throughout the movie, because that's, the whole point of the movie. But
Yeah, I have to assume that that whole middle part is just its intention is sort of to take you along the ride with her of is this happening, is this not happening? Because like when she's having those moments of insanity and when she's in the insane asylum, things get so convoluted that I'm like, is this even really happening? Like her like peeling off the wallpaper, her happen to be in the same psychiatric room that the murderer was in back. Like I was just like, is this real? Like, or is this just in her head? Like I felt like that whole middle part just didn't match the beginning of the movie or the end of the movie, and I can only attribute it to we're supposed to be on this journey of like craziness in her head. But I found it really hard to watch that part of it, and I love that you thought it was a good movie because I thought it could be a good movie.
It did feel rough around the edges. I feel like this movie was like 75% there. You know what I mean? I feel like there could have been a bit more development of the characters. It was shot beautifully. Like, don't get me wrong, this movie was shot amazingly. They don't have to change a thing. Maybe it was editorial. Maybe they didn't have enough.
Right out of the gate, because the movie opens with a little blurb about in 1965 this town was evacuated and flooded to create a dam.
That was so bizarre.
So you get the entire flooding of the town. And that was shot so well. Yeah. Like, it looked so good.
Well, underwater photography is not easy. So,
And, well, yeah, just that whole thing. And I remember thinking, like, if they had to build the set and flood it, that is impressive. And it turns out that's exactly what they did. They built that whole set. And they built this town set and just flooded it.
So this movie budget was $30 million. So I guess back in 97, $30 million went a lot further than it does today because, like, some of it was like, how did they pull this off? And I think part of it was the amazing locations that they found that were actually there was an actual asylum that they used and the house that they lived in and the old hotel where they found she finds the body or where she predicts the body is with her dog. That was insane. And like just even just the forest scene where they were having their little children's play, I was like, holy crap, like this is so well done. This is perfectly lit. The little lights that the kids are like, and it, like, wow, it just, I don't know if because maybe they were on film. This is one of those movies where they were still not quite on digital yet. They were still using older film techniques. And it's just like everybody was on their game for this movie. But yeah, maybe it was the writing, maybe it was the script that was just too rushed.
No, I feel like we're rushing through our renditions of it. So to go back to the beauty, the cinematography, the just the imagery of it all, and so the flooded city and like just diving through it. What a massive, colossal waste of money.
Yeah,
because that did not apply to the plot line at all.
Oh, you mean the scuba diving and going through? Yeah,
just the existence of it
didn't need to happen.
Well, no, like the whole thing of the flooded town was crucial to the serial killer's backstory.
Was it necessary to show any of it? Massive waste of money.
I kind of agree.
Too close to the microphone.
I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautifully shot, and it was amazing.
Okay, let's shit on Nina. Great, I'm having fun.
No, I agree there. It was really nice to watch, but did it really need to happen? I would say maybe a third of it.
I think it hooks you in. That's for sure. I also feel like,
but it never came up again.
They didn't build an entire. I feel like they didn't build an entire town. They built like a couple thousand square feet.
Built the church
and then just shot it from every angle.
Yeah, they definitely built that church. 100%. Yeah. And then the finding the couple bodies underwater. But that again, that's like a day or two instead of like a whole week.
It also
week
doesn't make any
longer,
sense
right?
that they find her daughter in the ravine when she's only been gone less than 12 hours, but she's having visions of her daughter in the orchard, which is north of where their town is.
Yeah,
the geography of that murder and the importance of the murderer being attached to the underwater city was geographically inaccurate. And just took me out of the story. I was like, she can't have been...
This could be like 15-minute drive apart from each other.
But if he was kidnapping a little girl, why would he drive her to an orchard just to drive her right back to put her in the water? And if she's the only one.
Yeah, I get it. And I think...
and if they're going to shoot underwater of the city, like, then explain it to me.
I think too. I think it makes a bit more sense later because Ruby, he was trying to get things to work, right? So he was trying. I think
Who's he?
the serial killer.
Oh, you mean Vivian?
Vivian, yeah.
Yeah.
So Vivian was trying to get things to work, and obviously, for every other previous victim, things didn't work out, or he just got upset, or whatever it was. I mean, we'll get into the acting in a bit, but it feels like maybe that's part of the reason why it was that he was just trying to build a happy home.
Mhm.
And he couldn't do that, so he would just lash out and kill his victims, and
then go and dump them in the.
then go
In the
and
reservoir.
chain them.
But they weren't all being dumped in the reservoir, just her daughter. Because they're dredging.
yeah.
They started the episode, they're on the beach and they're dredging to find the little girl, but they didn't find her.
Yeah.
They
Right.
found her somewhere else with her rocks in some sort of a.
But didn't they say we found her with rocks in her pockets or something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah,
Mhm.
or stones in her pockets.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I need to go back.
But see, that's the thing, is that there is
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
rushed. It's
to this
rushed,
story.
yeah.
There's a lot to uncover about it,
Mhm.
but it's rushed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is one of those films that I feel like you could take the entire plot of this movie and rework it as like an 8-episode miniseries, and it would be fantastic.
And I feel like it sits in the middle of two different styles of film. It's in the middle of your regular early 90s dramatic movie, like in terms of like cinematography and what it
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
But mentally it tries to take you on some sort of a psychological ride. Like what movie am I thinking of? Memento or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, where the whole thing is to screw with your head, and by
And
the
that-
time you're done, you're
yeah.
like, God, I'm not even sure what I watched. And
Yeah.
but it's just somewhere in the middle of both of those.
And I almost wish there was more of that screwing with your head.
Me too.
Because it was good at times, but it didn't give us a chance to really, as viewers, to really understand what Claire was going through. It was just like, oh, I'm going crazy, he's in my head, and that was all it was.
But also there's massive plot holes because she is in the house and she sees the dog barking at the swing moving. So what's happening there is the murderer not only clairvoyant and attached to Claire, but also have telekinetic powers. That
Yeah,
he
because
can
the
move
apple's
the
there.
swing,
Yeah, and the apple's
and
there
then
all
the
of a sudden.
boombox starts playing.
Yeah,
Like that he can do all of these things remotely, or is Claire absolutely imagining all of that? And if she's imagining that, is she imagining being in the asylum? That kind of looks like the future. Like it looks like a sci-fi spaceship.
Oh yeah, that part with the
Asylum?
padded walls. Yeah, with the
Yeah.
weird
Like,
glass door.
I was like,
yeah.
is this even a place on Earth?
Yeah, just backpedaling a little bit, going to the beginning. I really liked that the husband absolutely believed his wife that she was psychic, but he was super upfront with just being like, I don't understand it. He's like, I believe you, but I don't get it. Like, it makes no sense to me. And he wasn't just like, no, you're insane. He was like, no,
he wasn't
absolutely
gaslighting
believe
her,
you.
which is good. 'cause
He's just
you
like,
get it- you
I
get
have a
that
hard
lot.
time.
Yeah, you get that a lot in these types of movies where the wife is able to do something that the husband can't, and then he's just, oh well, honey, blah 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 blah, and that didn't happen, which was good. He was 100% supporting her and being like, okay, I believe you, but like, what do we do with this information? How do we use this? How do I take this to the police? Even at the beginning, how do I tell the police? Like, what do I tell them?
And then that's the thing, when he did go to the police station, he was talking to the police. I loved that shot. It was a long shot down a hallway, with the husband sitting on the bench and the police officer standing up talking to him. And they stayed in a really wide shot for a long time. And it wasn't until like the very end of the conversation where they bring it in and have a couple of close-ups before ending the scene. But I don't know what it was. That shot just stood out to me, that it was just this like 3 or 4 minute shot from like 50 feet back.
And the detective does a great acting job in there in his physicality of like, he can't sit still. Like, he just doesn't want to have this conversation. Like, he's fidgeting the whole time. Like,
he never sits down.
Like, he never sits down. He leans up against whatever's behind him.
Yeah.
Puts his foot up on it. Like, he's just, and then it's not until he has to tell him, like, break form for a policeman and give him information that he's not allowed to give him, which is just like, shut up, we found her. right?
Yeah.
And that's when his physicality completely drops. He makes eye contact and he's just like, look, enough. This is why I won't have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
I wrote down, there's so much planned camera. This movie is amazing just on that level. So this is a very good, this movie is a very good example of meticulous planning for camera. They planned this, like there's no ways they showed up to location and decided, hey, let's put a dolly track between these giant shelves of cider bottles. And then let's do a pan shot through the side. There's no ways they just showed up and they just decided they were going to do that. Like they planned this crap months in advance. So shout out to Darius Kanji, 7, Amour, Midnight in Paris. He shot 7. So there's you can see where like he's like really on point. Just the like Claire's being chased through the rows of all the bottles and everything. I'm just like, oh my god! Like I'm just like looking at this because you have all the distortion of them running through the bottles, and the camera's catching it all, and it's just the children playing in the forest, and it just like so much of it, even when it's reality, feels like it was shot as a dream. Like they tried to shoot as much as they could as a dream. So that alone like sucked me in. But again, it was a lot of the plot holes and the logistical what the fucks that took me out of the movie. And sometimes it was the acting, sometimes it was the lines. So it wasn't necessarily delivery that took me out. A lot of it, I think, maybe they just tried to cram too much into one movie. I feel like.
I feel like they didn't pick one thing. Like the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. You're right, and it does absolutely suck you in, and it has all of these very dreamlike qualities. It's very artsy. It's very like university film student artsy. Like they know that they can do these shots. They know that they can do it, and they do it. But I'm like, to what end? That whole sequence of her in the road and that huge, immense car crash with a semi flipping over. We work in film. We know that those things.
I'm watching this scene and I'm like, holy shit! This cost so much just to go after the dog,
right? Like,
but my specific note is fuck that crash.
Cool crash, great crash.
Yeah,
probably 2.5 to 3 minutes of footage of the entire film,
and that probably took
nothing.
And that was like a multi-day thing.
Adds
like,
nothing to the story. Can you imagine being an AD on that? And being like, what? But why?
That's like my note here: kids and animals in the same scene.
Power to them. Like again, it's I can't give myself credit for this statement, but I read a review on it, and it was like it was a really well made bad movie.
Yeah, because when it came out, it was not well received.
No,
and I mean. Again, too, like it kind of spreads in a couple of different areas. It starts off as a very wholesome movie about clairvoyant woman, and she's got her kid around, and things are happening. Kid dies, and there's a murderer, and then it leaks into this weird realm of like, are we dreaming or are we awake? And she's losing her mind, and then it goes right back to like, oh, the murderer's real, and this is where he is, and you're chasing him, and you're running for your life.
Yeah,
and
it was.
It's like the beginning and the end were one movie, and the middle was just this dream.
Yeah. It was like Memento meets The Fugitive meets Memento. It was like this weird sort of like,
And once Robert Downey Jr. comes onto camera, I was like, oh, now we're watching some interesting stuff. Even though in the same movie, we watched that great underwater shot and that great car crash. But I forget about that until Robert Downey Jr. comes on screen. I'm like, it was something to watch. Yeah. Something interesting.
I even wrote down there's a lot of random plot points that sort of lead to nowhere. You know, more focus should have been on her clairvoyance and the connection between her and the serial killer.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that really sucked me out in the beginning was the whole affair. Like the supposed affair. I was like, does that add to the story in any way?
It was just conflict between the husband and wife.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like just to
But then it was like, it was over in 5 minutes. It was like, we just had dinner, and it does it show that like I don't know. It was just.
I don't get the point of it either.
Yeah, it was unnecessary.
And to your end, it was kind of nice that the husband had this very healthy, like, I believe you. You're going through this. I see you go through this. It matters. It has an effect. I don't know what the effect is. I don't know how to support you. But and he's speaking to her very realistically, like,
Yeah.
if it's that bad, then we have to do something.
We need to get you help. We need to,
or you need to help, and you need to use these visions. Like, it's a cool plot point. So why throw in this? Oh well, he might be cheating. Like, why?
Yeah.
The letter fell out of your pocket. You should be more careful hiding your letter, having your love letters. I mean,
and
today's
then the whole subplot is left,
strange.
and you're like, is he cheating? Is he not? And it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Another point I wrote down here for acting, the doctors. I mean, obviously, they're not going to understand the whole clairvoyant aspect of things, and they're going to be very skeptical being doctors. And I mean, and I'm sure we've all been frustrated at doctors one time or another in our own lives. I know going to the doctor sometimes is like, hey, great, I just wasted 2 hours in the waiting room, and then I wasted an hour with you, and I've still accomplished nothing after waiting 6 months to come and see you.
My mom got sent home repeatedly once by a doctor who was just like, nah, you're faking it. Like, it's not as bad as you say it is. You just have the flu. And then eventually it was so bad that my dad brought her to the hospital like a third time, and the shift change had happened, and there was a different doctor. And the other doctor was just like, your appendix burst hours ago. Why did you only come in now? And they're like, no, this is the third time we've been here. The other doctor sent us home twice, being like, it's not that bad, go home. And the doctor on shift apparently just like walked over to the phone, picked it up, called the doctor who was in before him, and just started screaming at him.
Good. I mean, bad that your mom had to go through that.
Oh yeah, she was.
Good that the other doctor got
what should have been a 6-day stay in the hospital for an appendix removal, because it burst, ended up being like a 6-week stay.
Oh,
but you were saying about the psychiatrist.
Yeah, Claire's doctors are bordering on trying to be as uncaring, as empathetic as possible. I mean, she literally tells him, "Go to the hotel. You'll find my husband's body."
Yeah,
just put her in the asylum, forget about her for like 2-3 days, and then, by the way, and she escapes, and then pulls the gun on the police officer. By the way, go check the fucking hotel, and then takes off. It's just so, I don't know. I get it. The whole plot point and the trope of doctors is to literally be uncaring and to not listen, but it feels like this one was a bit too far, because like there were a couple things she said where she was easily able to prove her clairvoyance, and the doctors still didn't fucking listen to her, and it was so frustrating.
But you're also watching it from the perspective of having followed Claire. If we shoot that same movie from the doctor's perspective,
she's a crazy person.
Is Claire the sixth person that day who has said, "You have to go check this place"?
Yeah.
My dog has turned into a demon and is locked in this room. Like, they've heard variations of what she's saying all day long. So it's how do you cut through that noise and become special? I guess.
Sure. Yeah. And some of Annette Bening's acting in this movie is amazing. And then sometimes it feels like the dialogue is just convenient. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to explain it. It was like she would go on and on and on, and then something would happen, and almost just, that just wrapped that whole thing up. Okay, great. Like she pulls I don't know. It just
there's two ways to see it, and I see it a different way.
Okay.
Because I think her acting is kind of bang on in the whole thing.
Okay.
And if you take the scenes, and that's the other thing about the movie. So if you take it by scene and her acting in those scenes, she is acting her reality. Right. And I find her to be quite realistic in those moments. It is pieced together very weirdly. And the only argument that I could make for it might be that it's the idea behind, yes, she's going crazy, but when you go crazy, you don't go crazy the whole time. You don't hit crazy and just stay there. Right. So she bites her husband's lip. He's bleeding. She's having a hard time. But then we immediately cut to the next morning, and she's having a cigarette out on the porch, and everything's normal. So as the outsider, it's very jarring. It takes you out of it. But if you were to follow this woman through her life and having slept the night and woken up and had a coffee and a cigarette, she's at a sane point in the day.
Yeah.
So
true.
There's one way to look at it, and she is quite an amazing actress, so I'm inclined to be like, she did the best that she can. I think the script is kind of similar to those Hallmark scripts where there's the dialogue doesn't fit because you're trying to cram something into something. And for this movie, I think you're trying to cram too much of an idea into a small parameter.
It's like 3 ideas where it could be easily 1.5.
Mhm.
You know, and there was just too much going on. But can we talk for a minute about Robert Downey Jr.?
Sorry, one quick note while we were on Annette Bening. was not that far off from American Beauty either.
That's true. I think it came out 2 years. Actually, it came out around the same time.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure American Beauty came out in '99. I remember because I was working in the theater.
Well, because this came out in '99, but was shot in '97.
Correct. Might have been the same.
Why did it take 2 years?
Sometimes they want
bigger movies. Sometimes,
well, also editorial sometimes, and maybe they didn't like what they
had
cut.
too much footage.
Too much footage. Or like, gee, how do we fix this? Yeah,
which kind of would match what we're saying already. Because if it is very artsy and very planned and imagery, maybe they did shoot more.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably 2 movies. They got 2 movies.
I want to see the director's cut.
Yeah,
actually, I want to see the DOP's cut.
Yeah, seriously.
So Robert Downey Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Now this was 1996. He had been arrested on drug charges.
Yep.
He got clean. Mm-hmm. He did 3 or 4 movies in 97.
Yep.
Remaining clean. This is the movie that he relapsed halfway through filming.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, I read that little anecdote as well. So
partway through this movie is Robert Downey Jr.'s relapse into drugs.
Now, he's not a very big part of the movie.
No,
it feels like he needs to be in it.
And he's pretty much in one location.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of begs a curious question of, was it something in his personal life that sent him back in? Was it him trying to get into this weird, very strange character? Did that play any role in it? Or was it just happenstance? Like, he just made bad decisions and happened to be working on this film at the time?
And just looking at the schedule of the movie and knowing that he's only in 2 locations, he plays a very small part, so he's not in the movie a lot. There wouldn't be a lot of days of shooting attributed to him, I don't think.
Yeah,
because even the stuff that in the film before we see the big reveal, before we actually see him as the serial killer, it's just like we don't ever see the full person. Like we see like a hand, or we see like a whatever, like the husband getting stabbed in the eye, for example. It's like we didn't see the serial killer. We just saw probably stand-in or somebody else, because that's probably not.
I would assume, especially at that time, he would have had already a little bit of a name attributed to him. He'd cost a little bit of money, so why not bring in a hand for the murderer? But anyway, so I can't help but wonder if it's a little bit of tabloid gossip to just make it more interesting, because I just don't feel like there's a lot there, or I just don't feel like there's a lot of real life time for him to have gone into a relapse.
Yeah.
Right.
It does feel, though, and I wrote this down, that it's Robert Downey Jr. acting as Nick Cage, acting as Robert Downey Jr. acting as a serial killer. So he's kind of doing the whole Tropic Thunder thing again.
Nick Cage
before. So like I don't know. It just felt like, I mean, he's a serial killer. He has some identity issues. It feels like more time could have went into just figuring out this character. But again, given how little he is in the film, he probably didn't have enough time to figure out who the character is.
Or did the relapse affect the shooting schedule, and we've ended up with a version with less Robert Downey Jr. and less of the murder and more of her dreaming, confusing this because of reality.
They could have potentially shot a lot of the finale stuff earlier on.
True.
Depending on that location. Like if they were shooting out that location, that could have happened earlier. They could have then gone to shoot a bunch of his stuff at the Orchard. He relapsed, and then they just didn't shoot as much. I mean, granted, unless we talk to the creators of the film, we'll never know this.
Yeah.
It's pure speculation.
What I want to know is, what does the trans community think of this movie and of his character? Because they probably, I mean, I can only assume they don't appreciate sort of that.
Well, and my question too is like, is this a true split personality, or is it a character or an affectation that brings him comfort? Like, and then is it true trans?
Did you notice 2 times he talked into the mirror, and it sounded like he was talking in a different voice? So at the very end, he looks at after his hair's been cut and he's incarcerated again. He looks into the mirror and he says, "This will be all right." And it's almost like he put on a different mode, and it's like he's acting as the mother who was the one that abused him, as we saw throughout the movie. But again, it's like his character is so strange. Like, you see what he goes through as a child. Like, he was chained to the bed as the thing was being flooded, and you feel sympathetic for this character. But it's like, but then all of a sudden he's just evil. It's like, yeah, you went through shock therapy, and you went through like they friggin' like waterboard him basically as a kid, and they did all this shit to him at the asylum, which is terrible. But it's like, and then all of a sudden you see him, and he's like, I don't know, like a late teenager when he's trying to escape, and he's just like. He's just evil. Like, he's just evil, and he's thinking, and he's not like neurotic, and he's not like, he doesn't seem like an abuse victim. I mean, maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but it just seems like some of it was just, oh, I'm the serial killer. I needed to have a tiny bit of a backstory. So now everything is just, now I'm a convenient serial killer is kind of how I felt watching his character.
And for me, it felt like it just kept wanting us to jump to the conclusion that this is split personalities.
Yeah.
Without really solidifying any kind of a direction. It was just like, jump to this conclusion because it excuses all the weird behavior.
Yeah. Like I got the feeling that they were trying to do like you said, like the he's created in his mind the persona of his mother as a secondary personality. But I also think like the cross-dressing stuff that he does was purely an escape plan.
Right.
Like, that wasn't anything but he needed to get out, so he dressed as one of the nurses.
But then he's
to
like 20 years later, he's in the cidery, and he still looks like that, right? He's still.
And the whole time that Claire's thinking of him and attached him very early on in the movie, it's Vivian Thompson, and that's why she keeps saying it's a man or a woman.
I thought the character's actual name was Vivian, though. Like, I thought like just that was just his actual name was Vivian.
Oh, that's super unclear.
Because like I took
from
it
the very
as,
beginning, it was referred to as Vivian.
Yeah,
like the mom called him.
The mom called him Vivian. I think it was maybe it's one of those things where like the mom wanted a daughter and didn't get one, so she named her son Vivian.
Put him in dresses, that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, so he's just evil from a young age, and he escapes the facility, but does psychiatric abuse and treatment sort of a killer make? Like, that's kind of the question I'm posing. Like, he had all that shit happen to him, and then he got to the asylum, and it's like, instead of taking care of him, they just abused him further, but then that turned him into a serial killer. It just, I don't know, it kind of...
I feel like he would have ended up as a serial killer either way. That the asylum just didn't help.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an element of him trying to, like, rebuild the past, like, find a daughter, find... family. Like,
that's the whole thing of creating the little family, and he's starting by trying to find a child, and then in the end,
and then the mom's dress, which was kind of creepy. And
and
putting Claire in the mom's dress, and then having the kid, and then but he's still, I don't know. It feels like it's like it's one small little hill that it just had to go over to be a good movie. You know what I mean? Like, it went through a bunch of like really good.
That's why I'm mad at it.
It's like, and we just gave up. It's like we went
so much potential,
and then we just went back,
and it never quite hits
and
anything satisfying.
What was the ending? So did she go with her daughter? Like, she's drowning. Did she die? And then she go with the daughter, and now she's haunting Vivian? Is that what happened? Or is she still alive?
No.
But she's figured out how to do the clairvoyance thing and then like infect his mind.
I believe my final note was, fuck yeah, Ghost Claire.
Because that's what I thought. I was like, okay, but at the same time,
I think she died.
Maybe, because you don't see her, so you can assume that she died. But in a way, it feels like her powers are so strong, she would have to be like alive to be able to affect Vivian in that way. Like, that's what I feel.
And I almost wanted it to be that.
Yeah,
my mind went there too, and I was like, "Well, that's kind of neat," but I feel like their intention is she's just a ghost now, and that's.
But I wanted to see her in the waiting room, like with a devilish smile on her face, because now she's just fucking with Vivian.
Because she's reversed that power that he used on her.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see, you know.
And then they don't really touch on it, or not too much. It's not super clear, but it feels like the whole clairvoyant connection to Claire, which again is an annoying thing that Claire is the clairvoyant. But anyways. I feel like that connection.
Oh God, I didn't even think of that till now. Thank you. That's brutal.
Is to draw her in with the child to create that perfect family, right? It's like, so I enjoyed the idea of like, well, now it's flipped, and she's used that power to now abuse him and haunt him.
Can we talk about the apple scene?
Why are
Which one?
So many apples?
When the kitchen goes crazy.
apples
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah.
Every scene, apples in the foreground,
Yeah,
apples
there
in the
was a lot of
background,
apples.
on the counter.
So was she just making like a boatload of apple pies? Because that was a lot of apples for one apple pie.
Did you work on Swedish pie?
Yeah. Yep.
Apples
I
everywhere.
I feel
Just
like
a knowing look from Jesse. Anyway, that entire scene was a nightmare for me to watch, purely from I felt so bad for the props team. Because the reset on that scene of just apples going everywhere.
And this is
Was
it a carburetor? Because it was like shooting out,
Yeah.
just
like,
shooting
overflowing.
everything out.
I don't think you picked up on this, Mark. For all of its good camera shots and all of its planning, this one shot when they're up in the corner of the kitchen and they're going from her at the island grabbing the apples to the sink, her shoving them in, they're just whip panning.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like. I was like, ugh. And I understand you're supposed to be like uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable moment, but I hate them. They have the camera arm and they're just yanking on it back and forth. That I didn't appreciate, but like the Steadicam was great, and like all the giant pans, all the truck ins, those are amazing. But like that one moment, yeah, you're right, absolutely. I was like, what is this?
And
this
that's
shit.
right in the movie where you're like, is it real? Is it not real?
Yeah.
What am I watching?
That was the scene where it was like, if there was ever any question of just like something that was in her imagination, it was that apple chaos scene in the kitchen, where I was like, is this real?
But also the dog barking at the swing going by, like none of that can be real.
But then the dog ran away, and she went looking for the dog, and that's when Vivian grabbed the dog, so that she could use it to bait her when she was in the asylum, but then also to bait the husband to go to the hotel where he was killed, right? So, yeah.
That whole scene made no sense. And why apples for the entire theme? The only thing that I could make a connection to the apples was the play that they're doing.
Snow White.
The kids is Snow White, and that whole idea is sort of like this foreshadowing of the entire movie.
So much foreshadowing in this movie,
and the entire idea. But the apples just keep continuing. And I don't know.
Well, when they got to the cidery and it was like it was over the top. It's like I'm looking at all these apples, and the first thing I'm thinking, okay, are these rotten? How long have these been here? You know? And I mean, there was at the end when she jumps through the, I don't know what you want to call it.
She jumps down into the silo.
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of rotten ones there. I'm like, okay, good. We have some apples that are rotten. Like at least there's a tiny bit of realism here with the whole. But there's so many apples, and I'm thinking like, is this what he does? Is this how he lives? Does he actually press these in his spare time?
But who picks the apples?
Yeah,
because they couldn't have been there for that long.
No, they would have been delivered. They would have had to have been delivered. Yeah, so it would have been like, was it prime apple picking season?
It's an orchard.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was
no, and that's why they couldn't find it, because she kept saying that he was taking the children to an orchard, and that's why the police could never find it.
Because she kept seeing apples, but it was a cidery.
But then when is a cidery not close to an orchard?
In the beginning of the movie, one of her visions with Vivian and the little girl, he's walking through an orchard.
Oh yeah, they probably did at some, because we've shown
that was her. That was her daughter though in that first vision, was it not?
Well, she doesn't know that yet.
She doesn't know that, but we kind of figured that out.
And again, we're assuming because the body of that little girl shows up in the ravine of the drowned city, and it's why, again, back to my initial argument, why would he drive her out? Because I don't think he has a car, so why would he get her out to the cidery, which we think is an orchard, and then bring her back?
Yeah, and I think he kidnapped Claire's daughter. Well, he kidnapped Claire's daughter at the play, which was in the forest, and maybe on the way out of the forest there was an orchard, and that's kind of what she was seeing. But it was late at night, so
which magically is connected to a cidery at the end of the movie.
Maybe they were like, maybe they were walking all night, type of thing. But like, what little girl would go with a random stranger for like an 8-hour walk until sunrise? You know, it's just like I don't. Generally, girls aren't like kids in general aren't that trusting. So it just kind of like. I don't know. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, not at that age. I was going to say, my
have
toddler.
a lot of questions at that age. My legs are tired. Where are we going? I'm hungry.
Their daycare took them to a playground. Yeah. And apparently there was just a random mom with her kids at the playground. And they were leaving. And my daughter just walks up to this woman, holds her hand, and goes to walk away with them.
Oh, wow.
And this woman's like, no. no, you have to go back there. Like, you can't come with me.
What a creepy moment for that mom. I
Just
don't want to
this-
kidnap you.
This
Is
2.5-year-old
anybody
just walks up, just holds
Yeah.
her hand, just like, okay, I'm ready. Take me.
The only last couple things I have were the locations in this movie were just so good, so insane. Just
Yeah.
like it
Was
almost
this-
feels like production, like
New
like
England? Was this New England shot?
Massachusetts, I think.
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts. I can't say it. Don't stop. But apparently
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
I've
Boston.
got 2 other points.
But yeah, the
somewhere New
locations-
Englandy.
The locations were insane. The forest where they had their play was insane. The home was insane.
Mm-hmm.
The insane asylum was
Insane.
insane.
My note for the hospital was like, this place does not do upkeep.
It does. It's
Like-
not real. Like nowhere. Like
I still
everything
think
else
it's
in the
real. I
movie
still
is
think-
fully realistic. But then they hop into this asylum, which is set decorated like it's the 1950s of
Yeah.
that like slight alien power. Like
Now, granted, this is post closing of most of the insane asylums in the States
most
because
of
Reagan shut
institutions
them
have been shut
mostly
down.
down.
Yeah,
And it could be this is just that one place that doesn't really charge that much because they're so crappy and run down. And so they're
No,
just
it
like,
was-
we just don't update
yeah.
shit, but we kept it open because there's still going to be people who just want to dump people off.
so, back in the height of aviation, a pilot who's regularly working and away from home is choosing the cheapest asylum for his wife. Who's
No,
gone
I'm
crazy
saying it's the
because
only
his
one that's
daughter-
open. I'm saying it's the only one that exists.
only one that's it's still open.
There's
Yeah.
just something about that whole sequence that doesn't match.
No, for sure. And the abandoned hotel was amazing. And apparently,
Oh, such a great set.
apparently at maybe I don't know how long afterwards, but they said that that hotel was sort of rediscovered and like revamped, and now it's like open and fully open,
Oh,
and
neat.
it's like
Oh.
a tourist destination. Apparently, it's. But I
Neat.
mean,
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice to
maybe we
hear.
should go metric trip.
And the movie had money, and so I feel like that
Oh, yeah.
asylum thing is all a choice, right?
Mhm.
Because, like you were saying, the Shakespeare, the kids doing Shakespeare in the park. Like,
Mm.
first of all,
Yeah, right.
just the grandioseness of this play in the
Yeah.
park with these children. Like, I've
Yeah.
done Shakespeare in the park as an adult, and just the level of production value
Oh,
that this
absolutely.
had. It had a horse.
yeah, yeah. There's a kid on a
child
horse. That's right.
Rode a horse into the middle of the play.
Yeah, the
Again,
huntsman. The huntsman.
Animals and children in the same scene.
That is just absolutely
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
So the whole asylum, the whole dream sequence, it's just like it had to have been a choice,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't
Mhm.
get it.
I think it was just very. They were just going all. They were going for broke with just being stylistic with this
Yeah.
film.
Now, one
Um,
thing that we haven't touched upon, and I don't know how we've made this had gone this far. What are we in? Like almost 40 minutes, and now without having touched on this one part that is never explained. It makes no sense, and in the half of the movie is just used repeatedly over and over again in really random places and times. Is my daddy was $1.
Right.
Yeah, the nursery rhyme type thing.
I don't.
It's carved into the walls of
Yeah.
where
but it
of the
didn't
drowned
really like.
city. It's carved into the walls of the asylum that
She
Vivian
starts
and
painting
her.
it. Yeah, she's
She's singing it like
yeah.
and it comes from nowhere and it goes nowhere.
I think the only reason that exists was to like something that that Vivian had heard as a child and was seared into their mind purely as a way to like connect the dots, like, oh, it was there, oh, and it's here again. So
Yeah,
the
it's sort of
same
a
person.
MacGuffin of sorts. Yeah.
Okay,
Like, that's it.
it's lame.
It's something that some
It's
writer came up
super
with
lame.
and was just like, this is really cool, but it doesn't actually have that much bearing on the
No.
story whatsoever. It could have been any nursery rhyme.
Could have been. Yeah.
It's just that if the fact that it gets repeated throughout to connect Vivian to different locations and times.
hmm Which then we have to believe that Vivian was in this asylum that Claire has now been brought to as the second asylum
Mm.
because
Mhm.
the first one wasn't good enough.
No,
So let's bring her to a second one.
And make sure she's in the same room as her, serial killer stalker.
yeah,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she starts breaking out of that room that I was like, oh no, this is real.
yeah.
Oh, this is absolutely
Like,
still
it's
real.
actually just how she gets out.
Yeah, but like it doesn't make sense how she gets to the first asylum, what's happening when she's in the first asylum. why she goes to the second asylum.
Yeah,
Is this just another room in the same asylum?
75% of a movie.
Yeah.
75%.
Again, I think that if you took this whole concept of this town that got flooded and this evil mother that chained her child to the bed and left them in the town, and this whole like murder mystery where you have a clairvoyant, you have this psychic who specifically has a psychic connection to the killer. If you were to take that and really flesh it out and have the whole insane asylum storyline over the course of like 6 to 8 episodes of a miniseries, I think you could have something really fucking cool.
Like 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something like that. Yeah.
Like even like hour episode, like 6 hour long episodes.
Yeah. No, there's definitely really good story beats in this movie, but again, it's nothing is really fleshed out enough to make you sort of care, because you're just sort of left wondering, like, okay, I wonder where that's gonna go.
Yeah, like you could really like get into the mystery of who's this killer and the killer's backstory, and maybe a little bit more backstory on Claire. You could flesh out that whole situation with the potential affair, like that isn't just like a single scene thing.
It's based off a book.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah. That's
okay.
True.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse.
I want to read the book now.
I don't know if what I said was captured, by the way. So
yeah, it'll probably get picked up.
Based on a book.
Which there might just be, there might just be a lot of parts of it that are shot because they felt like they had to, and there might be parts of the story that is assumed will be implied by previous knowledge.
We'll also assume that it just reads well, right? They're like, we're going to shoot the scene and it's gonna work.
Well, and it's kind of that thing, right? When you're writing your own story and you're rereading the same part over and over again, and you've kind of made a mistake in there, but you're not seeing it because it's in your mind. So I wonder if the people who made this movie after a certain point were like, "Oh, it's super clear," and you're like, "Not so much." And I was really excited to do this podcast because as I said, I watched it in 2 different sittings a couple of months ago, and then I had to watch it again.
Yeah.
And so I was really, really tired the first time that I watched it. Had to stop it in the middle of the dream sequence because I was getting so confused. And then finished it. That was months ago. So rewatched it last night, a little bit intoxicated. And I was like, none of it is gelling. Is it me? So it's really neat to kind of bounce the same ideas. Now, one question that I have, which might be a stupid question based on my state when I was watching it, is it clear that the little boy chained to the bed is Vivian, and like how did he get out of that situation?
I think there is. So you see initially the person chained to the bed in a scene. My children are awake. And then later on, you see a longer version of that scene where Vivian breaks the bed and gets out.
Okay.
I thought it was the water was rushing in and maybe the bed floated. So
there was some of that, but then like the bed gets broken. Vivian escapes.
And then it's funny though, because chained like by the wrist and then able to swim out, but then once they're outside, no longer chained to the wrist. I noticed all that. So they were chained by the wrist. And then the water rushes in, the bed floats or something. They're able to swim out, get to the window. They're on the church. They're like hanging out of the window, and then there's no more chain. And then they're in the church steeple, and then there's boats circling. It almost seemed like the boats were like jeering Vivian or something. Like they weren't even trying to save.
To me,
weird.
I was like, "Is this in Vivian's head?"
Yeah,
I was like, "Is
true.
this
That's
just
true.
because?" The city was flooded in 1965,
Or something like that. Yeah.
and this movie is set in
95. So it's like 30 years.
So does that match Vivian's age and the age of the boy? I don't think so.
No, I don't think it does.
So right, so again,
and they never make it
I
apparent
don't
that the
know.
movie. I don't think they ever say when the movie takes place, but it seems like it's modern for the time.
It's
so
like
it seems like it's mid 90s.
Mid 90s maybe.
Which
like
would be
97.
because what the child Vivian's around 10,
Yeah.
so that would make Vivian like 40.
Yeah, and Vivian doesn't. It looks somewhere
Doesn't
between
come
20
off
and
it.
30. Like it looks like a very young 30, if 30.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it just
That
felt,
bothered me.
Oh,
as
and then
well.
Vivian escaped. I can't remember the year, but it was like 72 or something like that. So Vivian would have escaped when she was like 16 or something. So then it would have been like another
Well, if
20 plus years before. Yeah, so it would have been like 36, 40.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. Yeah, it seems kind of.
Yeah, because they never say like this movie takes place in 1982, which would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Not based on the cars, but anyways. Sorry, I'm
but
a
like
stickler for that.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Well,
Like,
that car came out in 95.
It would have made more sense story-wise. Like, I don't know why 1965 was picked as the date, unless that's a remnant from the book. But then they just cast Robert Downey Jr., who was younger at the time.
Yeah.
Because there's no way...
the driving off the bridge.
Oh my gosh, you should not have survived that. Like,
no, but I'm just watching it and I'm just like, no.
There's no surviving that.
It just just driving, just the act of just driving off, like just driving. I understand driving frantically, driving angry, driving hurt.
Oh, she's committing suicide.
Yeah, no, and I realize that she's doing it, but I'm just like,
Oh, and she wakes up from that situation in a fully modern hospital.
Yeah, 6 weeks later, 6 weeks, right? I remember the husband said 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, what are we looking at? How are we feeling?
So
about
is
this?
Robert
there a
Downey Jr.
world-
was born in 1965.
Wow.
Yeah.
So however old that kid was in the flashback scenes,
I would have
the
said
character is
7 or 8.
that much older than Robert Downey Jr.
But the kids that he was, how old were the kids that he was abducting?
Like 7, 8.
So that would have been, in my mind, that would have been his targets, because that's how old he was when all that shit happened to him, right?
Even then, that still puts him at... Okay, so the movie was filmed in 97, so we'll say it takes place... We'll say it takes place in 1995. And again, I think the book probably came out previously, but because of when the movie came out...
Would have been at least...
They didn't adjust that 1965 to when the book came out. And they didn't adjust it for like, okay, the movie came out 8 years later. They didn't bump it up to 1972.
Yeah, so it would have been like mid-30s to 40s.
Well, it would have been, if that's 1965.
65, it would have been like 7 or 8.
Yeah, it would have been...
So it would have been 37,
7,
37, 38, something like that.
So late 30s.
Yeah, which he does not look.
Which Robert Downey Jr. was 32 when they filmed.
Yeah. You know, but he knows who he is. He's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
He was creepy as fuck in this movie, though. Like, he did a really good job of playing that crazed,
Still
creepy...
feels like Nick Cage.
He was really the best part of this movie.
Oh, for sure.
Annette Bening did a good job with what she had, and kept me somewhat interested in the storyline the whole time. But he was just very captivating in his role.
Yeah, I'll give him that. It was good.
Do we want to rate it?
Yeah. So what's our technical ratings?
Technical, I have to give it a fairly high rating. Especially knowing how film gets done. There's a lot in here to appreciate and value. And I'd have to give it like a strong, like, 8 for the times as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little bit older now, so.
Well, and I gotta say, we haven't touched on this yet, but the soundtrack was really good too.
Didn't jump out at me.
I liked the soundtrack.
So I didn't watch the first like 45 minutes until, I watched it on my phone, which is terrible. And then Sophie finally woke up, my daughter, and I borrowed her laptop and I borrowed her super awesome headphones. And then I noticed that the sound was quite good.
You have a television, Mark.
No, I can't turn the television on at 6 a.m. and my daughter's sleeping. We're both sleeping at it's holidays.
We're days after the holiday.
Yeah, we're sleeping at my parents' place, and we're sleeping right in front of the TV. So that would not have worked out.
That's
so.
fair.
Oh, actually, we should mention why you had to make a new mug this morning.
I think I might have talked about it in the last episode when we did Gifted.
In the preamble. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, but I did. We in the last episode we showed the clip from Daniel, the director of This Love Is From Another Planet, and in that video he requested one of these mugs that my wife made for us, so that we can have them on the show.
Thank you, Angela.
Thanks so much. And he requested one, so 2 days before Christmas, I went to the post office and shipped one to him. Which then meant we only had 2 mugs. So in an emergency, I had Angela make another one for us this morning. If you want to see other things she makes, you can check out amazedesigns.ca. There's your plug.
Nice plug.
And also, we have this wonderful, rotating sets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We should talk about
musical sets.
We're in another space. Last week. Well, not last week. Gifted we released before the holidays. This episode we're shooting a few days after Christmas. We'll probably start releasing these in a week or two. last time we were in Aaron's store. This time we're in my workshop. For those of you who don't know, I am a props master and props builder. And this is my little basement workshop where I build stuff, which is why there's a giant tool chest behind me and a wall of building materials and, just Star Wars stuff, because that's for me.
That's for me.
You can't see it, but behind Nina is the massive Lego castle set. I've done nothing else for the past 3 days.
It's the beautiful part of between Christmas and New Year's. It's just the nothing days.
Yeah.
But back to why we're here. I give it a technical rating of 8.
Yeah.
Mark?
I would agree. I'm maybe a bit higher, like almost 9. So I'd give it like a between 8.5 and a 9, so like an 8.75. No, it just technically it was lit amazing. It was shot really well. The underwater stuff, the sets, the stupid semi-truck crash, like all of these things were just very technically on point. So yeah, I almost give it a 9. Just a hair away from giving it a 9 out of 10. So,
and just so people out there know, the technical rating that we give a film is absolutely for the director, the crew, the people who made this movie.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving a rating to them separately from how much we enjoyed the film, because there are people out there who work really hard and are very good at their jobs. But it doesn't mean that the final result's going to be a good movie. And it's not their fault that it's not a good movie. Case in point, I don't know how well the camera can see this. There's a poster behind me for a film called The Humanity Bureau with Nicolas Cage. It's a film that Marc, myself, Jesse, who's over there, we all worked on this film. There's a lot of very talented people who put a lot of time and effort into making that movie. And who did a really good job. But that movie's shit. It's hot garbage. I only have the poster on my wall because that was the time that I got to meet Nicolas Cage and work with him.
There's a point in that movie
career
where
high point.
there's a sniper crosshair on him, and he like dodges out of
That's
the way.
a different movie, Mark.
No, that's Humanity Bureau when he's in the forest trying to get away.
Oh, does he do it again?
Yeah.
Isn't that in the movie like Next or whatever?
Yeah, he does it again.
In the movie Next, it's really bad where he's just like,
oh wait.
And dodges a bullet.
That might be a different movie.
That's a different movie.
I could be wrong.
Mark.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What's your technical rating?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it like a solid 8.5, 9. Like I said, like I think the cinematography was great. Props to the props people who had to reset that Apple scene. I like the soundtrack. Just a visually good film. I mean, it was a little fast paced, but I think overall the editing was well done. I enjoyed it
based on how probably they had to get that movie in under 2 hours, and they had 6 hours worth of footage, and they're like, okay, let's
squeeze it in.
Yeah, clown car.
Enjoyment rating. Nina, go.
5.5. Like it's just 6. It just passes.
Mark,
it's just entertaining, but like I wouldn't watch it.
You wouldn't watch it again if you didn't have to, because we had to watch it again because we were supposed to record this episode 5 months ago, and somebody didn't show up.
Yeah.
Well, we can't put.
We'll get in. That'll be on that story.
Whole situation,
that story will be on the Patreon.
Yeah,
we will record that story. And it'll be on the Patreon.
I'm gonna sit Mark in front of a microphone, and when we make a Patreon, if anybody wants to help support us, because
I just
we do this all for free.
I will be beat red the entire time.
There's a great fucking story behind why Mark didn't show up for that recording session, and
man,
it's hilarious. And I had to keep it secret until, because you were live texting me, and nobody else knew, and I was like, I got to keep this to myself until you're willing to talk about it.
All right. In terms of how much I enjoyed this movie, I enjoyed parts of this movie. Parts of this movie I really enjoyed. Parts of this movie I was like, why on God's green earth did they? And I'm not a practicing Christian, but why did they choose to do this? So I kind of agree with your rating. I want to give it a slightly higher rating, maybe 6.5. I enjoyed parts of this movie. I feel like those parts are kind of outweighing the parts I really didn't enjoy. So maybe my rating is skewed. Maybe I'd almost give it a 7, but not quite. So
Gotcha.
It's one of those things where, yeah, this
If you
is
took
like,
out 20 minutes in the middle, 7. Solid
I
7.
feel like they could add 20 minutes, and I would understand more,
Yeah.
and I might enjoy it even more. But then again, it might feel too long. It's hard to say. Yeah, I give it like a 6.5, maybe as high as like a 6.75, something like that. So
Gotcha.
So I'm gonna give it like a solid 7.5. And I think, one, I've always enjoyed this type of movie. Like this has just always been like my jam, like the weird psychological
suspense kind of
thrillers.
psychological. Yeah.
I just enjoy that genre in general. I also think where I was personally at the time was the kind of movie that, like, I go through phases of I'll watch kind of specific types of films based on just where I'm at mentally, emotionally, and this one just happened to fit into that time period of this is exactly the type of movie that I would have wanted to watch at that time. Upon a rewatch, I had zero interest in watching it again. But at the time, I think I also watched it at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning after we were shooting.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was just overtired, wasn't in a great place, just wanted something dark and weird. And so I remember finishing the movie and just being wide awake, being like, that was awesome. I really liked that movie. And then upon rewatch, I was like, it's not that good. So my initial was like a 7.5. It's been brought down to like a 5.5, 6 since then. It was one of those, and it happens where you just catch a movie at the right moment.
Yeah.
Like for you.
Yeah.
That it just it hits in the right way. And that was what happened the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think we're coming to an end here.
Feels closed.
That was another episode of the Random Cinematic Universe. We watched In Dreams. Next week, so we had a hiccup. Originally, we were supposed to air this episode and then the episode of Gifted. Due to availability, we reversed the order. So at the time of recording this, Gifted has already been released, and we will be recording this one. So now, next week is The Dark Tower from 2017, based on the Stephen King novel.
Novels. Quite a few of them.
The Gunslinger. For those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm holding up a copy of The Gunslinger. And in that episode, so again, I bring up the fact that the original schedule I made for the show was created around this time last year, where I just preset which streaming service we were going to pick, and then I use a randomizer for each one of those streaming services. So if I go, okay, this week is a Netflix film, then I hit random movie title on Netflix. So it's totally Nina's phone. Some of the titles that when I initially made the schedule are no longer available on those streaming services. So The Dark Tower was originally on Netflix. I'll have Jesse and Marc for that episode. But we did have to rent it. It was a $3.99 rental for standard definition because you picked HD.
Well, yeah.
That's your fault.
I want to watch it in higher definition.
I did not. I didn't care. So anyways, that was this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, we need it. Please.
Yeah. Watch our other episodes too.
Watch our other episodes.
Haven't already.
Go watch Rattle Cans. Great episode.
Oh yeah.
Episode 3. Just watch it. If you want to see 3 of the angriest people you've ever seen in your life, go watch that episode. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
I've been left alone with a rolling camera and a microphone. I wish I could think of something funny to do.